Hello everyone, I'm here with Vladimir Skultety, and Vladimir is a polyglot from Slovakia, and a few years ago he posted a video on YouTube, and the title of that video was European Speaks 19 languages. The video became very popular, he got millions of views on that video, and after that he also got featured in the media in Slovakia, I think also in Hungary if I'm not mistaken, and recently he was invited for a huge, I think it's one of the biggest TV shows in Russia, called Udalvitiniya Ludye, if I pronounce that correctly. And Vlad, you went to the finals basically, right? And the recordings of the finals were recently. We can't talk too much about that because it hasn't been broadcasted yet. Vladimir, welcome to our YouTube channel, and I think there's a lot of things a lot of interesting things we can cover today. So welcome.
Hi, Jan. Thank you for having me.
Yes, Vlad, you speak how many languages do you speak? If they ask you,
It's always a difficult question to answer. You know yourself. I have studied, I think, about 21.
Yeah.
And depending on what I do, like if I get the chance to use the languages I speak a lot, somewhere between, I would say, 9 to 12 languages, I would say. Speak. For me to speak, it means at least like a B2 level, B1, B2 level. So, yeah, I would say 9 to 12, something like that.
It's pretty impressive because you speak like 8 of them at a C level, right?
Yes, but again, it depends on how often I have the chance to use them. If I'm really engaging into something that has to do something with languages, like translation, or I live in another country and I get to use the languages often, then yes, I think at my peak, I would say I speak about 8 at a C1 level, C2 level.
Yeah, it's very impressive because I've done lots of interviews with our polyglot friends here on YouTube, and there are not many people who speak like 8 or more people at the C level. I know Richard does, Luca, but then, well, maybe there are more, but I don't know them. Anyways, how many native languages do you have? Is it because Slovak is your native language, but also Hungarian, and then not short afterwards you also learned English, if I'm not mistaken?
So I was born in the southeastern part of Czechoslovakia at that time, and so the official languages here were Czech and Slovak. I'm from a Slovak family, but I went to Hungarian kindergarten, so I learned Hungarian and Slovak both as basically native languages, and Czech passively native. And when I was about 8 years old, I went to the United States and spent not too much time there the first time, but I kept going back every single summer, basically almost every year until I was maybe 20. And so I grew up with English as I was growing up. And I think that at a certain point I did speak English like almost as a native speaker. Now I think I'm losing that ability because it's been a while since I've been in the United States, and I usually talk to people whose native language is not English, but we speak in English. So there's always a sort of an accent when I talk to these people on their side, and it influences my accent as well, and the way I express myself. So I think that earlier when I was younger, when I was maybe 13, 14, 15, 16, I was completely native in English. I mean, at a native level. I think now not so much, but I still think that I could pass for a native speaker.
I think you're getting as close as you can get.
Yeah. If I told you that, like, I'm Steve, Steve Johnson, I'm from New Jersey, and you know we'd be in New York City, we could talk for hours. I don't think you'd know.
Yeah,
his name is Vladimir, and you know I'm from Slovakia. It's harder.
It's hard for me to tell. I'm not a native speaker either, but it would be interesting for the people who are watching this video. How close is Vlad? I think it's as close as you can get. It's really hard to pass as a native speaker. By the way, what were you doing? Like 1 month per year in the States? Was that related to your parents' work, or I mean, how do you end up in the States?
No, it was the other way around. We have family in the United States, and I just went there for the summer, basically. Like as soon as school ended here, I went to the States, stayed for the summer, and came back, and I did it basically every summer. So,
and then afterwards, you started with German, also at a very young age, right?
Yes. Shortly after that, I was maybe 12, That's when I started with German. We had German in school, but I didn't do too well. And my mom just decided that I should take German classes outside of school.
Yeah.
And found a really wonderful teacher, a tutor, a German woman. Basically she taught me everything I know. And similarly, I mean, to my trips to the United States, I also went to Austria for about 2 summers or something like that.
So your parents also found it very important for you to learn all these languages at a very young age. Do you think your parents had a big influence on your language?
Definitely. I think there's always this question about talent and environment and conditions, and I think that without bragging or anything, but when I try to analyze what maybe I'm doing better than others or what others are doing better than me, I think that yes, I do have talent. Maybe not the most talented person in the world, but I think I do have talent, and but I also have very good conditions. Like, of course, it's a wonderful thing if you go to a Hungarian kindergarten, if you're a Slovak, and of course it's fantastic if you have the possibility to go to the United States when you're 8, and go back every summer. I don't think that's something that a lot of kids at that time here could do.
So, how many languages did you speak at age 18? Let's say.
Hold on, say it again, please, because my microphone is falling out. Say it again.
How many languages did you speak at the age of 18?
18, I think it was 6.
6, yeah.
6, because I froze, basically. I'm from not a super small town, but it's about 240,000 people live here, and it's the second largest town in Slovakia, but still small, and at that time, there was no internet or anything like that, so I had no incentive to learn more, basically. I mean, I spoke Slovak, Czech, Hungarian, German, and English at a native level when I was maybe 13, 14, and I spoke a little bit of French because the sister of my grandmother used to teach me French when I was little. And for especially at that age here, there was no one who would be even like distant.
I can understand.
So I didn't have any incentive, and I basically froze for about 5-6 years. And I didn't learn more. So when I was 18, I spoke about 5 at a native level and French, like so.
If you already speak so many languages at the age of 18, I guess, then it also becomes easier to learn languages that are similar to the languages that you already know, right? Spanish, Italian. What was your experience learning all these languages afterwards?
So this is a very interesting question, right? Because people say if you speak many languages, then learning the next language is easier. Well, just like you said, it's only true if the language is related to the languages you already speak. But what you do have is you have experience, and you have a lot of confidence that you will, progress fast, quickly. But that was true until I started learning Chinese, because Chinese is a real foreign language, very, very foreign. And basically, that's when I realized that learning languages is
difficult.
Really difficult, and it depends on what language you're learning and what languages you know. So all the experience that I had from learning the languages that I knew, it was helpful, but I don't think I had such a huge head start against people that never studied any foreign language when learning Chinese. So
but for the older languages, at least it helped that you already learned so many languages at a young age.
Yeah, definitely. So even though when I started learning Italian, I think that was the first foreign language after the native languages that I learned. And I think that I didn't really even realize at that time that, for instance, the knowledge of English and Slovak would help me so much with Italian because of all the Latin-based words, right? So I didn't realize that at that time. I didn't really use this advantage. But after that, when I started learning Spanish and I compared Spanish and Italian vocabularies, I noticed, wow, there's such a huge overlap, and that's when it really clicked. That's when I really started to make use of all of these. There's a special word for that I can't come up with now, but basically the overlap that you have, and that how much it helps you and how much faster you can progress. And that's what people mean, I think, when they say, when you know one language, it's so easy to learn another. And this is also true not only for words, but also for grammar, expressions and all of that. So if you learn European languages and you already speak European languages, then it's much faster. But with Chinese, it doesn't help too much.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about Chinese a little after this question. What was my question? Oh yeah, many people. Of course, it gets easier to learn another language if you already speak a similar language. What about mixing languages up? People often ask me this question. I'm wondering how you think.
Yeah, they ask me the same question too, but I don't. So yes, I do mix up, but only sometimes and not very often. To be honest, I mix up languages when I either am only starting to learn the language and the language is similar to a language I already speak, or I haven't spoken the language for a very long time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't think there is a chance of mixing up, because I never learned two languages at the same time. I never learned. Yeah, there's like I always compare it to like if you it's like different sports. Like German and Italian are two different sports. So if you go swimming, you will not run in the swimming pool. You know, it's like you will swim in the swimming pool. You will
exactly.
If you go on a running track, you will not, I don't know, play cards or something like that. It's just different. You know, the different language is very isolated in my mind, I think.
Yeah. So is it maybe because when you learn a language, you first make sure that you learn that language until a high level, like at which you have a lot of experience using this language to connect with native speakers. So you're already. I always talk about personality. So you have already created this personality in this language, and that once you have that mode, that French mode or Italian mode, that it's hard to mix it up with another language, because it's.
I just think
different.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. I just think it's practice makes perfect. So language is a tool, basically to transmit what is in your mind to people through sound.
Yeah.
And it's just a tool, very complicated tool, but it's a tool. So the more you use it, it's like a skill, I should say, not even a tool. So the more you practice, the better you get. So I try to practice until it gets very, very natural, very automatic. And then, I mean, yeah, you can compare it to playing the guitar or any skill that you have. You know, once you're really good at it, then it's really hard to
automatic.
mix it up with something else. It's almost impossible. Like I said, if you play guitar, you will not use your violin playing skills and mix them up, unless you don't play either instrument well and you just started learning. It's the same thing.
So it's a matter of practice.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of practice.
You're also an interpreter and translator of Mandarin Chinese. You lived in Taiwan for 5 years.
Yes.
Why Chinese? Where the European language is becoming too boring for you, or how could a guy from Slovakia all of a sudden become interested in learning Chinese?
So it's a number of reasons, I think. I was studying for my master's in international relations, and my professor just said, why don't you research a little bit Chinese international relations, international politics, maybe get into the language too. There's not a lot of people in the world of diplomacy and international relations that speak Chinese really well. And I thought, that's an interesting angle. So I started thinking about it and started reading a little bit into Chinese. And I went to Italy for my Erasmus studies. And when I came back, I wanted to just choose a new language to learn. I was, like a long-term goal.
Yeah.
And that's a midterm goal, I should say. And I was choosing between Arabic and Chinese, and I eventually decided to study Chinese. But several reasons. One, and I think the first incentive was my professor's opinion, and then it was many reasons. I wanted to learn something really difficult when it comes to languages, and I was very interested in Chinese characters, and so all that. And
if some of the viewers here, let's say, if they want to learn Chinese, how long do you think it would take to reach a conversational level? We know, like, we can do this in a matter of a few months, maybe half a year, like in a language that's similar to a language that you already speak. But what about Chinese? Like, how long did it take you, or what can someone expect?
It's a difficult question, because I mean, you can have simple conversations after maybe 2 weeks, But there's this thing with Chinese where you just don't understand what people are telling you, and it takes really a long time until you finally understand what people are saying. It's really a very strange phenomenon, because I don't think it ever happened with any other language that I speak. You just don't understand what people are saying,
It's the same for reading, right? Like you've read more than 100 books in Chinese.
Yeah.
I do speak Chinese myself as well. I consider myself pretty comfortable in speaking Chinese, but when it comes to reading, that's a completely different thing. And so it's not only for listening. I think it's also for reading. Like, even though when you can speak the language without any problems, reading and listening sometimes can still be very challenging, and I don't have that with other languages. So, why is that? Do you know that? Like, is there?
I think it's the lack of vocabulary. Chinese just has really a lot of words.
Yeah,
and Chinese sounds are very similar. Yeah. So it's very easy to mix them up.
Yeah.
And so sometimes even if people say a word, you just don't understand it because it's maybe similar to something else. You don't trust your ears. Maybe it's used in an expression that is very strange that you never heard before. So your ears hear something, but your mind doesn't process it as something that you know. Yeah. And the second reason when it comes to reading is that Chinese written language is slightly different from the spoken one. So if you have a dialogue transcribed into a Chinese dialogue transcribed into Chinese characters, you would probably read it without any problems. But since written Chinese it's really like almost like a different language, So maybe that's a problem, because you're basically learning two languages at the same time. And to answer your question, how long it would take to get to a conversational level, I don't know, man. Like I said, simple conversations, you're probably you should be fine after a couple of weeks. You can say what your name is. But in order to have a conversation like we're having right now, man, years. It's like, I don't know, and intensive studies and living in country, I would say 3, 2.
Yeah.
Well, of course, we're right now this is like maybe C2 level English, so to get to a C2 level in Chinese, it really takes a lot of time. Yeah. But maybe like to get to 70% of what we're doing now.
Yeah, let's say B.
2 years.
Sorry?
70% of what we're doing now, I would say about 2.5 years of very, very, very intensive study. 3, something like that.
Okay. Recently, you were invited for this Russian TV show. How did they find you? Was it because of that YouTube video, or?
I think so. Yeah. Because they just contacted me. They've. I don't know how much I can talk about the details, but I just received an email from the team, from the producers, and they were inviting people to their show, and that's how they went.
The name of the TV show is Udivительные люди, and exactly, and it's one of the bigger TV shows in Russia. The name it means, by the way, unbelievable people, right? So they show people with exceptional skills, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, the first episode, the first round, has recently been published, so we can all watch that. Your performance on Russian television. I will put the link in the description below. How did you experience that? Because you finally you succeeded, basically, right? You went to the finals afterwards.
Yeah.
It must have been intense.
Man, it was like
really
first of all, it was an amazing experience on many levels. But I have never ever in my life experienced such stress. Like. It was just insane, man. Like, for instance, the show, this was the second season, so the first season had 90 million people have seen the show. 10 million people, 10 million people tuned in to watch every episode, maybe more, I don't know. So it was just, just to have that number in your mind. It was the most popular show in Russian TV history, if I'm not mistaken. Huge production, a lot of people in the audience, cameras everywhere, there's no room for error, just a lot of things that I had to, and then what I had to do was very, very, very challenging, and I had not a lot of time to prepare, to be honest. So it was just all that together, plus the problems with, it was in Russia, so I had to
everything was Russian, of course,
Russian visa. I had problems with my passport because my passport was about to expire and stuff like that. So until the last moment, I wasn't really sure whether I was going to go or not.
Yeah.
Plus, I was in Paris trying to organize all of that, so yeah, it was just a lot of stress for weeks and weeks, and then
Wasn't it?
yeah, and then I think I'm not sure how many people were in the round with me. I think either 8 or 10. I don't remember the exact number, but I won somehow.
Yeah.
I was actually very sure that I just didn't win my round, and I think you can see it on my facial expression when they announced me, because the way they announced the winner was a little bit different from what we used to. They were just showing the percentages of how people voted back on the screen, and I didn't see it, and then so I didn't know who won. You know,
really
only until they said my name.
Yeah, it was a really incredible performance. So what basically happened, for the people who haven't watched that video yet, is so Vlad was on stage, and then they had like a big school bus on stage as well, and like every time there was someone came out, and every person had a different native language, and he or she basically asked you for directions, and you
something like that. Yeah, they asked you something.
And sorry, you replied to everyone in their native language, in like what, 19 languages or something? Was
18 because 18, Russian wasn't there. Hold on. 17 languages.
17 languages. Okay, so you went to the finals, and the recordings have already been done. When can we see it on?
I think they will air on the 28th. 28th of October. I'm not too sure about this, but it will be on YouTube shortly afterwards. So unfortunately, I can't say anything about what happened in the finals, but
so we keep that a secret. We let that over to the viewers to find out. So make sure you're gonna watch it. If you're in Russia on television, of course. If not, then I'm sure that later they will be able to find the video somewhere here on YouTube. And the last thing, you've also written a book about Chinese characters. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How does it work? It's for people who are interested in Chinese characters, or?
Yes. Well, basically, so I have a bachelor's degree in Chinese studies, and my specialization was Chinese character etymology, which is basically just learning about the history of every single Chinese character and how it came to be what it is. And when I was learning Chinese and I was learning how to read Chinese, I never found any book that could teach Chinese character correctly, but also in a very user-friendly way. You know, so I would just read the book. Short book, nothing too huge, very easy explanations, very clear, but scientifically accurate, academically accurate. And I couldn't find anything like that. And plus, all the characters that were in these books that I found were very strange. You know, they were usually based on frequency studies that were very shady. Like, they would just lump together millions and millions of texts and choose the 1,000 most frequent characters from that and teach them. But you know, if you choose 1 million texts, you're going to have really weird, random texts in that mix. So the characters often came out not too useful. So I made my own frequency studies and tried to come up with a list of the most useful Chinese characters, and just decided to eventually write a book myself, because I was doing my own research and basically had what I was looking for. That I couldn't find, so I said, why not write a book by myself? So I tried to write a book for beginners, but it's from beginners to upper intermediate. I think anyone can benefit, because it explains Chinese characters for what they really are. You know, you can really read into the technicalities of each Chinese character, into the history, but in a very minimal, straightforward, easy language kind of way. And I hope that you can read it in maybe 40 minutes, and you will know 250 new characters just by reading it once. So
okay, and
that was my.
Where can we find it?
You can go to my blog, which is www.foreverastudent.com, and there will be a section called Understanding Chinese Characters, and that's where you can find the book.
Okay. Well, we're going to close this interview with a few quick questions. I'm just very curious. You have learned all these languages. Maybe you're not going to like this question, but I want to ask it anyways. Which language is more difficult for a native English speaker? Chinese or Russian?
Chinese.
Chinese or Japanese?
Chinese.
Japanese or Farsi?
Japanese.
More difficult than Farsi. Then Farsi or what? With what can we compare Farsi in terms of difficulty?
Russian.
Yeah?
Farsi.
Russian or Farsi?
Farsi.
More difficult.
Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. Well, that was it for now. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Sorry, for an English speaker?
For a native English speaker.
It's hard because Russian has a ton of vocabulary that you don't have to learn. You know, you have Latin-based words, Greek-based words, but the grammar is a bit challenging.
It's very challenging, I think, for a native English speaker.
But Farsi grammar is maybe not as difficult as Russian grammar, but you have to learn a ton of words. Like, you really have to learn a ton of words because there's very little overlap. So I'd say Russian is slightly more difficult, slightly.
And between Farsi and Japanese, you said that Farsi was more difficult?
Japanese.
Oh, Japanese.
Japanese.
Because what? Because of the grammar? Because the word order
everything, and it's just far. You know, there's Farsi is an Indo-European language, so it has very comparable grammar to French, for instance, right? Not super comparable, but yeah, there's many parallels. But Japanese is just it's there. It's very far, and plus all the words that you have to learn. So
and then,
definitely Japanese.
Yeah, and then you also say that Japanese, or you find Japanese more difficult. No, sorry, Mandarin more difficult than Japanese. I know there is a video on YouTube. You made a long video with that in detail explanation. But the main thing was that, what was it again? Is that for Chinese there is so much grammar. Because I think there is many people who think, what, Chinese, a lot of grammar? You just put the words together and you have a sentence, right? While in Japanese the word order is different. You need to use all these particles. What do you mean exactly by that Chinese has a lot of grammar? Is that once you reach the higher levels?
No, well, the thing that people say here often is that Chinese has no grammar, or that Chinese grammar is very easy. And what I say to it is that grammar is not just genders, cases, past tense, and things like that. This is, what we have very developed. Italian has 3 verb groups, then it has thousands of possible endings, because it's a very, very developed in that segment of grammar. Chinese doesn't have that. The Chinese has many different things that make grammar very difficult. For instance, to express all of this, right, which you can't express with verb endings in Italian, in Chinese you usually do it with word order, or using special words, or using special expressions and all that. And it's very unpredictable. Like in Italian, literally all you have to do is learn a couple of tables with verbal endings, and that's it. But in Chinese, you don't have nothing. Like, you have to do it by feel. And how can you do it by feel?
Okay, that I can agree on. When you said in the beginning that Chinese is more difficult than Japanese, I was like, I'm not so sure about that. Especially when you mentioned that Chinese has more grammar. I was like, but Chinese has less grammar. But I think it's this thing about feeling. Sometimes it's like, how do you say this in Chinese? And it's a very, it's maybe technical, but I can't live without music. How do you say that in Chinese? You can't. You don't have this without thing. How would you translate it?
我没有音乐，我不能生活。
Yeah. So what you say here? I have no music. I cannot live. And you need to know, because if you want to translate this, you're thinking, okay. Without, how do you say without? And if you start thinking that way, automatically, while in Italian, all these Romance languages, ohne Musik kann ich leben. Without music, zonder muziek, blah blah blah.
In Slovak,
Chinese,
the same thing.
Bez muzika, I guess, in Russian. So I think that's the trick with Chinese. I think it's good to point that out. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Vlad, that was it. Half an hour of interesting language learning discussion with Vladimir Skultety from Slovakia. And Vlad is also going to talk at the LinguaHackers online conference. And the topic of his talk will be live in, I forgot how many, 17 or 19 languages or something.
I think it's 20 languages.
Live in 20 languages, exactly. If you want to see Vlad's full talk, then go to the description below, where you can sign up, and then you will receive a notification when Vlad's presentation is going to take place. Vladimir, thank you very much for this interview, and looking forward to watching the full presentation.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.